Man, was I wrong about the Utah Jazz on the screen? I have my Western Conference standings predictions that I made before the start of this season, and as you can see, I was sleeping on Utah. Utah did disappoint me last year, and that's the biggest reason why I had them where I had them, but I'd rather just own up to my mistakes at this point than try to hide from them. Clearly, I was dead wrong about the Jazz, and I'm here to talk about what's made them such a big threat in the West this year, and whether or not they can win it all. First of all, Mike Conley's chemistry with his Jazz team has been one of the biggest reasons that they're at the top of the West right now. In his first season with Utah, Conley struggled to fit in, and looking back, it makes sense why that was. Before joining the Jazz, Conley had spent 12 seasons in Memphis, so he had to adjust to a new system in Utah. On top of that, he had to get used to playing alongside guys with different play styles. Conley played for years in Memphis with Marc Gasol, a big that liked to play more pick and pop than pick and roll. So to go from Gasol to a more traditional rim-rolling big like Gobert was a learning experience, and we have to consider that. Conley was also teammates with Zach Randolph for many years, a back-to-the-basket four that doesn't really share much in common with Utah's starting power forward Royce O'Neal. Lastly, Conley has never had a backcourt partner as talented as Donovan Mitchell, so playing with that type of talent was new for him as well. But it's not just Conley's familiarity with Utah's offense and personnel that has increased, he's also become a lot more comfortable with his role. In his last two healthy seasons in Memphis, Conley averaged over 20 points per game. So when people heard that the Jazz would be moving on from Ricky Rubio and replacing him with Mike Conley, people thought that Conley would be able to provide that same scoring output in Utah and significantly lessen the scoring load for Donovan Mitchell. This season, I feel like Conley has realized that Mitchell is the number one option, and then the rest of the team has a score-by-committee attitude. He doesn't have to be the number two to Donovan's number one, he just needs to pick his spots and not force anything. At the making of this video, Conley is averaging a very efficient 16 points per game, but it's his ability as a floor general where he's been most valuable. Conley gets Utah into their sets, he's able to collapse the defense with his quickness, and he knows when to look for his shot and when to pass. Conley's been equally as phenomenal on the defensive end this year, as his improved chemistry with Gobert has made Utah one of the hardest teams to run pick and roll against. Quinn Snyder deserves praise for the fact that he's played Conley and Gobert so many minutes together, because that improved tandem has taken Utah from the 13th ranked defense in 2020 to the second best defense in 2021. Speaking of Gobert, he too has been better this season. We all know how impactful he is on the defensive end, but Rudy Gobert has made Utah's offense even deadlier this year because he's accepted the fact that he's not going to get many shots each night. I've been listening to what a lot of Jazz fans have had to say about Rudy, and I've heard quite a few fans saying that he's more under control this year. Last season, Gobert voiced his frustrations with the amount of touches he had been getting, and because of this, he would occasionally force the issue when he had the ball in his hands. It's possible that this may have come as a result of Rudy being in a contract year, but now that he's got his money, he's been able to play without anything else on his mind. Gobert's assist numbers are not too high, but he's been making really smart decisions out of the low post this year. Rudy commands so much attention when he has the ball near the rim because he's such an efficient inside scorer, but rather than forcing it, Rudy has been recognizing the help early and finding the open man. Even if Gobert doesn't get the assist, his initial pass causes the defense to enter scramble mode, which makes it easier for Utah to score at some point on a given possession. As expected, Gobert has also been grabbing lots of offensive rebounds this year, but guys such as Derek Favors and Royce O'Neal have also helped in getting Utah extra possessions. Favors was a very underrated pickup for Utah this offseason, as they were in need of a reliable backup center. Favors provides a really good defense at the backup 5 spot, and he actually has a higher offensive rebound percentage than Rudy Gobert does this season. As an added bonus, Favors has been shooting just under 80% from the line in 26 appearances, which has helped make up for Gobert's poor free throw shooting. In the case of Royce O'Neal, he's also been helping out with his relentless aggression to get second chance opportunities. His offensive rebounding numbers don't exactly jump off the page, but he's become a guy that the defense really has to account for because he's always looking to crash the offensive boards. O'Neal's constant pursuit of the ball is something that can wear on opponents, and there's definitely value in what he's doing. The Jazz have typically been a great defensive rebounding team with Gobert, but this massive improvement on the offensive glass has made them that much harder to beat. Getting back to Royce O'Neal, he has always been a great 3-and-D player, but he's continued to buy more and more into that role with each passing season. O'Neal can defend 1 through 4, but this season he's been asked to guard a lot of bigger fours, and he's done a really good job so far. Offensively, Royce has been a great spot-up three-point shooter, and his willingness to defer to the top guys on this team is something that every championship contender needs. Lastly, we have to talk about this team's historic three-point shooting. Through 29 games, Utah is making 16.6 threes per game, which would break the previous record of 16.1 that is currently held by the 2019 Rockets. What makes Utah's shooting even more impressive is their percentage from three. That 2019 Rockets team shot 35.6% from outside, whereas the 2021 Utah Jazz are at 39.3%. There are 6 guys on this team that are shooting very well from three this season, but I've got to give the biggest shoutouts to Donovan Mitchell and Jordan Clarkson. Mitchell and Clarkson are shooting over 8 threes per game at 39 and 38% respectively. This marksmanship has allowed for Utah to get out to big leads, and it also means that they are never out of a game either. Ingles, Conley, O'Neal, and Bogdanovic have also been great from the perimeter, and if the Jazz are interested, they could try to trade for another shooter in JJ Redick before the trade deadline. I touched on most of the players getting big minutes on this team, but I've only briefly mentioned the contributions of Joe Ingles and Boyan Bogdanovic. Ingles has been an amazing point forward off of the bench, while also shooting 45% from three on the season. A lot of people like to give credit to Clarkson for making Utah's bench so good, but Ingles has done a tremendous job of orchestrating the offense when Mike Conley is not in the game. In the case of Bogdanovic, the counting stats make it look like he's been flat out worse this season. His efficiency is slightly down from last year, and his scoring average has gone from 20 per game in 2020 to 15 points per game in 2021. However, what a lot of people forget is that Bogdanovic had to get wrist surgery last May, causing him to miss the bubble. He got off to a really slow start in the first 18 games this year for the Jazz, and I think it's because 1, he was coming off of surgery, and 2, that surgery caused him to go 9 months without playing in an actual game. However, Bogdanovic has looked more like his old self over the last 11 games, averaging 19 points on 49% from the field and 42% from three. If Bogdanovic can continue to play at the level he's capable of playing at, Utah's offense will become even deadlier, and that's something that other contending teams should be very worried about come playoff time. So Utah has looked incredible this season, but the question that everyone's asking is whether or not they can win a championship this year. While they aren't my favorite to win it all, I do think that they have a legit shot. We're nearly halfway through the season, so it's hard for anyone to say that their elite shooting, dominant rebounding, and suffocating defense is a fluke. At the making of this video, they rank 4th in offensive rating, 2nd in defensive rating, and 1st in net rating. These are all elite rankings, and they're reflective of championship teams of the past. The only thing I worry about with Utah is if they'll be able to match up well with certain teams in the playoffs. Big men like Jokic, AD, Porzingis, or even Serge Ibaka could all present problems for Utah because of their ability to shoot from both the mid-range and three-point line. This would force Gobert to have to defend on the perimeter, and it would make it easier for teams to score around the rim. Also, Jokic, AD, and possibly Porzingis could put pressure on Gobert and potentially get him into foul trouble in some games. The Jazz have also struggled against multifaceted scoring guards in the past. Just look at what CP3 and Harden did to them in Houston, or what Jamal Murray was doing in the bubble. All of the players that I mentioned could present challenges for Utah, and I haven't even mentioned Kawhi, PG, LeBron, and a few other guys yet. For Utah to go all the way, there isn't some specific strategy that they have to execute. They just have to carry their same level of play from the regular season into the playoffs. That includes big playoff performances from their 2 stars, Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Ultimately, the playoffs are where stars shine the brightest, and the best players are the ones that dictate the outcome of a series. Gobert isn't expected to put up big scoring numbers, but he has to be more disciplined if he's matched up with Jokic or AD in a playoff series. In their most recent playoff matchup with the Denver Nuggets, Rudy averaged 3.7 fouls per game and had 4 or more fouls in 4 out of the 7 games. By getting into foul trouble, the Jazz weren't able to put Gobert on Jokic for certain moments in that series out of fear that he could get into even worse foul trouble. Gobert wasn't exactly shutting down Jokic, but he was the one player on the Jazz that was making it remotely harder for Jokic to score. Derek Favors was a nice pickup, but the Jazz are a much better defensive team with Gobert in the game than when he's out. For Donovan Mitchell, he doesn't need to be as good as he was in the bubble against Denver. He just needs to maintain or slightly elevate his level of play from what he's been doing in the regular season. If Mitchell can average 27 or 28 points on good efficiency, and Rudy's impact on the game can be felt by staying out of foul trouble, the Utah Jazz can beat anybody. This team is better than they were last year, and no team should want to go up against them come playoff time. Don't sleep on the Utah Jazz because they're legit, and they have a chance to be the last team standing this year.